Right, who are we expecting? Anyone else? I think Brian threatened he might come, but we'll see.
We literally put off the driveway and had to just stop because it just wouldn't demist. We were like, okay.
Oh, I'm just stuck in the car now. I mean, you could have walked up, Lizzie.
I know.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. Right, we all good? Lovely, cool. Thank you everyone for coming to tonight's first seminar, if you will. I kind of wanted to put these on because I wanted to give some value back to our members, right? And I think a group setting is really great for all the reasons that I mentioned about asking questions, getting interaction. Hopefully you guys get more out of it than just like your one-on-ones with us. And it's stuff that we can give to people who can't attend as well, hence why we're filming today. I would ideally quite like to do a seminar, I'm thinking like the last Wednesday of every month, maybe for the first 2-3 months. So we've got part 1 of our Fat Loss Forever seminar tonight. But if anything crops up, like the questions are already great, I can feel some stuff that might be helpful in part 2. I have already written part 2 and it's actually in the thing. So if we get through part 1 really quickly and you guys want to do a bit more, we can just jump onto that. I don't want to keep people here forever. It's ideally quite short and sweet, so we get a bit more time to just ask questions and hopefully give you guys some good, actionable information. And that's the most important part, is actually giving you stuff that you can take and do, because I think we all probably know enough information about nutrition, but obesity is still very prevalent and a lot of people do struggle to maintain or keep their weight down. So it just shows that information isn't enough. It's then having actionable stuff that you can do, right? So that's kind of the idea with this, is I don't want to just give you a load of info because then you'll just walk out and the same thing will happen. It's like, can we give you things that are actionable things that you can go and do as well? Actually, one of our attendees as well is one of my example clients as well, so we can grill Lizzie later. Yeah. So, we've got 2 parts, right? Part 1 and part 2, okay? So part 1 is about the foundations of weight loss and hopefully just kind of demystifying all of the confusion around what is actually happening when you lose weight. And then part 2 is what we call the sort of hidden levers of fat loss. These are the actionable things that you can go and do to help you towards your goals, essentially. So the reason most diets fail, and it's something like 95% of diets or people who diet will go back to their previous weight or more within 3 to 5 years of doing a diet. That's why they say most diets fail. And generally it is not necessarily the diet that fails the person, it's the person that fails the diet, basically. And so what we want to do is, or what we want to go through is the reason that most diets fail they are too restrictive. Most people go way too over the board, cut out all the joy in their life, get their calories so stupidly low that it's almost impossible to stick to. Or they're too confusing, like you've got to eat at this certain time, but not at that time, but you've got to eat this much then, or too much. Or they are too short term, you know, no carbs before marbs, I've got 4 weeks till I go on holiday, I've got to go crash diet sort of thing. So it's these really kind of short term things. So we want people to think less restrictive, hopefully less confusing and a bit more long term, because this is fat loss forever, right? Fat loss is 100% dictated by calories going in versus calories going out, okay? And you may have heard otherwise and things about hormones and all these other things. Our body cannot break the laws of thermodynamics. You've heard of maybe starvation mode. People go into starvation mode, they can't lose any weight. I guarantee no one was not losing weight in Auschwitz. Like, when your calories are that low, you are going to lose weight. There's none of this starvation mode. This is where some of the confusion gets in, because people think, oh no, if I go too low calories, I won't lose weight. You will, it's just really hard to stick to. That's essentially what happens. But what is a calorie? So a calorie is a unit of energy, right? It's the amount of energy required to raise 1 litre of water by 1 degree, right? That's a technical term, okay? All of our food contains calories, essentially, and some have more, some have less. And we might go into the macronutrients about what has more or less, but I think I'd just like to keep it quite more simple. And essentially, our body is always trying to maintain homeostasis, right? It's always trying to stay the same. So we require a certain amount of calories to survive. Most of the things I'm talking about today are actually on the wall. And you may have seen them, but not necessarily asked about them, right? So the one that we're looking at is the one just behind Ricky, which is total daily energy expenditure. That is your metabolism, right? That is the amount of calories that you will burn in a day. 70% of that is dictated by the calories needed to keep you alive. So if you lay down on a bed for 24 hours, That's the total amount of calories you would need for your heart to still beat, for your brain to think, for your lungs to inhale and exhale. That's literally the base. The other 30% are things that we can influence, okay? So one part is your non-exercise active thermogenesis, or NEAT as we call it. That is all the movement that you do throughout the day that isn't specifically exercise. So me gesticulating with my hands around at the moment would count as NEAT. Me standing counts as NEAT, okay? Then that's about 15%, so that's a sizable chunk of the amount of calories that you can control, right? The next is EAT, exercise active thermogenesis. That is 5% of your daily output. So that's actually quite not that much, as in, so exercise doesn't actually burn that many calories in your total 24-hour calorie burn, right? Hence why we don't focus on that here, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then the last bit is the thermic effect of food. So actually 10% of the calories that you burn throughout the day is the calories required to literally burn and digest the food that you're eating. Certain foods have higher thermic effect, protein, we'll get into that later. Others have lower thermic effect, but that is your metabolism in a nutshell. So that is calories out, right? That's, if we're looking at it as a scale, we've got calories out here. Calories in is all of the food, liquids, anything that requires calories that's going in and we are digesting, okay? If those things are equal, so calories out, calories in, we call that calorie maintenance. That's where your body should just pretty much stay the same. If we increase our calorie intake, so our calories go up and our output goes down, we will call that a calorie surplus. When we go into a calorie surplus, our body stores that extra energy as fuel. And we store that in two ways. We store it as glycogen in our muscles and our liver, so sugars in our muscles and liver, and then we store it as fat, body fat, adipose fat tissue, which is just under our skin, and visceral fat around our organs as well. And we do that so we can save energy for a later date, right? And it makes total sense if you're a caveman and you've only got access to calories for a very short period of time. You need to store that stuff away for winter. That is kind of the idea of it. But we live in a caloric surplus now, basically. We could all sit here and order tens of thousands of calories straight here to the studio with very little effort to get it. We don't even have to go out and hunt anymore. We can literally just order it here. So the amount of calories that we have access to has just grown exponentially, right? If we tip the scales the other way, let's say we increase our calories out and we decrease our calories in, suddenly we're tipped the other way now. We're now in a calorie deficit. And that means that we're going to lose weight, and actually we need to start using some of those energy stores that we have stored up. We mainly go for glycogen because it's very easily available. Sugars are easily available to get from our muscles and liver. And then we go for body fat. And that's what happens when we get into a caloric deficit for a long period of time. That's how we lose body fat over time. And it is as simple as that in principle, as in theory, but actually doing it is where the challenge comes, and that's where most people get it from. But I don't want anyone to get confused. It's got very little to do with hormones, unless you have a diagnosed thyroid issue that can affect your metabolism. For 99.9% of people, it is all about calories in, calories out. Okay? Lovely. Now, the Twinkie story. Why have I got the Twinkie story up here? So there was a professor, Dr. Mark Hull. He's a professor in nutrition. I believe it's Kansas University. He wanted to prove that calories in, calories out was the most important thing. That is the main driver of fat loss. So he decided to eat a diet, 50% of it, if not slightly more of it, was quote unquote junk food. Twinkies, Snickers, crisps, Mars bars. The other 50% was lean chicken, protein shakes, green veg. So it wasn't 100% junk food that he ate. But he ate in a caloric deficit. So he only ate 1,800 calories over a 10-week period. Okay, so for him, that was less calories than he needed to maintain. So he was in a caloric deficit for that period of time. Over 10 weeks, he lost 27 pounds. It's quite a significant amount of weight. That's 10 and a bit, 11, 12 kilos in that time, coming up to sort of 2 stone. All of his health markers improved. So he took bloods before and he took bloods after. His cholesterol came down. His blood sugar came down, his blood pressure came down, his fitness was better, he had more muscle, less body fat. So it just goes to show that it is the power of weight loss or fat loss is the main driver of improving health outcomes, okay? Not necessarily what you are eating, okay? So, like I said, your hormones and metabolism will follow the calories in, basically, that you've got from there. Would I recommend that diet to anyone? No, right? He was doing it to prove a point, right? Yeah, sorry about that, Jack, yeah. He was doing it to prove a point, yeah. And I mean, if you want to, you can, but I imagine, think from anecdotally, he wasn't that happy, as in, it's great eating Snickers and Mars bars, but then like your blood sugar's a bit all over the place and you've got mood swings, he was hungry quite a lot of the time. It's not great, but he had the systems in process, right? He knew what he was doing, right? He's a professional of nutrition, so he knows exactly what he's doing. He had an end goal as well. He was only doing it for a set amount of time. He was doing it to prove a point, right? So it's not massively fair compared to most normal people, but I think what he wanted to prove is that it doesn't really matter what you eat. The total caloric intake is the thing that will drive what happens, basically, if you'll lose weight or you'll gain weight. But it shows that if you can keep certain foods into your calorie target that you're aiming for, it makes life a hell of a lot easier to stick to what you're doing, okay? Another thing on the wall that you guys probably have seen but haven't looked at is our fat loss pyramid. It's just on the left there. You've got your glasses on, Lizzie. Can you read the bottom thing at the bottom?
Sustainability and adherence.
That is the base of the pyramid when it comes to fat loss, is sustainability and adherence, right? We could all eat the perfect diet, but if you could only do that for a day, it's not going to change anything, right? It's our repeated habits over time that are going to make it. So, for example, I am quite partial to ice cream. I quite like ice cream. So I will try to keep ice cream in my diet if I can, because that keeps me happy and it keeps me sticking to it. I don't feel like I'm missing out and I don't become, sad and upset. I find it's just easier for my head to stay in it, right? So myself, Paige and Ricky, we're all dieting for a photo shoot later this year. So we've all kind of started on this at the moment. And we are in a caloric deficit. We're all losing weight. I'm keeping an eye on those two, and I've got a coach keeping an eye on me. But I 100% have not been quote unquote perfect at all. I've had events and family things that have gone on. I was at a gig a couple of weeks ago, but I've still managed to lose about 3.5 kilos since the start of January. And that is mainly through just sticking to a caloric deficit and not getting too upset if and when the scales go up and down. We'll get to that in a second, right? So the idea is we want to find your calorie deficit. That is number one on our fat loss fundamentals, right? It has to work for you, okay? So it needs to be foods that you like and enjoy and know how to cook and prepare. We might encourage certain foods a bit more of, certain foods a bit less of, but it has to be stuff that you're familiar with, right? If we go too big of a calorie deficit, you're more likely going to burn out, you're going to start exhibiting binge eating behaviors, and you're also probably just going to bail after a week. You're just like, stop this, I can't be bothered. This is not fun anymore, I don't like it. I'm too hungry, I can't stop thinking about food. It's literally, as soon as I put my knife and fork down after the first meal, I'm thinking about the next one. That's not a good place to be, and we don't want people to be like that. You also don't want to go too small a deficit, because if nothing's changing, you just lose motivation. So you start exhibiting what you think is a diet, but the scales stay the same. You're like, well, sod this as well, I can't be bothered. What's the point? I missed out on certain things. I didn't eat that, piece of cake because I thought it was going to help me. Nothing changed. So we have to find the sweet spot, okay? So for us, we're aiming for, when we're tracking and watching our clients, we're looking at a 0.5 to 1% body weight loss per week, okay? So an example is if you weigh 70 kilos, we're looking at 0.35 to 0.7 kilos per week. If you're that same in pounds, 154 pounds, it's 0.75 to 1.5 pounds. Same at 90 kilos, 0.4 to 0.9, or 0.98 to 1.9 pounds. We find in that zone, you're kind of in that sweet spot where you're still losing weight, even if it's on the low end, so you've still got the motivation, and it's not too much weight loss in a week that you start to then become food focused, hungry, tired, miserable. No one likes that. So the way we tend to get people to do it when you start, and you may remember this, if and when you started, if you're currently doing it, we get you to track your food. We then also track your weight. I do that for at least a week, but if we can do more, the better. And then we watch what happens. Because ideally, our job is to not get in the way if you're already exhibiting the behaviors we want to see. So if we track your food for a week and your weight's coming down, you're in a deficit. We ask how you feel. Are you feeling good? Did that feel easy? Was that maintainable? Yeah, cool, crack on. We don't need to change anything. There's no point in us intervening if you're already doing it. If you track your weight and nothing happens, okay, cool, right, we've seen what you've been eating, you've sent us photos, we've seen your MyFitnessPal, it doesn't matter how you do it. Tracking doesn't have to be apps or things, you can also do photos as well. We then make a few adjustments and we see if the scales start to move down. That's kind of how we like to work. I'd rather see what you're doing now and adjust than just give out some generic, here's a 1200 calorie meal plan or whatever, and you're like, well, I don't eat that, and I don't like that, I don't know how to prepare that, and I'm too busy. It's not going to help anyone. So I'd rather see, or we would rather see, what are you doing now, and then where can we adjust to make. It's just the easiest way to make change. No one likes change, so let's try and make it as agreeable as possible. Essentially, that's what we like to think. Cool. We like to track, and hopefully you can see through our app, we do weekly averages, right? This is why we get you to weigh yourself every day. This is why we get you to track your calories every day if you're doing that, and we get you to track your steps as well. We look at the averages across the week because we get it. You can't nail it every single day of the week, and sometimes you either just don't have time, or you have big events coming up, or there's a client dinner that you can't miss, and it's I haven't got control of the menu. Fine, we make adjustments, okay? So we expect there to be weight fluctuations throughout the week. Wouldn't it be so nice if our weight just went down, 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 down all the time? Even if you're in a real deficit, there will still be days where it will hold, might even go up slightly, which will totally confuse you, and you'll be like, am I doing this right? What the hell's going on? And that's when you tend to get the, excuse my French, but the fuck it's. You just go, I did all this work yesterday and my weight's gone up, what's the point? We take the emotion out of it. We step back and we just go, okay, what's your weekly average? Oh, your weekly average came down by £1 last week. Cool, you're on target. Chill. Like, it's part of the thing. There are so many things that can influence these weight spikes. How hydrated you are, how many carbohydrates you ate, whether you had sodium, potassium, electrolytes, any of that. How well you slept. For women, it's what part of your menstrual cycle you're on. Like, how stressed are you as well? Cortisol can influence, water retention. All that stuff could change the spikes. It's got nothing to do whether you're losing body fat or not. So your relationship to gravity has nothing to do with whether you are still losing fat. Because when people have measured fat in a diet, fat is pretty consistent. It always comes down, but body weight changes. But what we like to see, and this is a great example when we've done that last year, was just this kind of bouncing ball just steadily going down over time with little spikes. But if you drew a line through the middle of it, it was always pretty consistent down, okay? And that's why we do our weekly averages. We try and take some of the emotion out of it and not get too disheartened if it's not going the right direction, but then not also get really carried away if it's always going in the right direction as well. So, and our app does that for you, but you guys know that. Right, this is one that I think where people do get confused is this and especially marketing as well, and especially towards females, they always talk about you have to manage your hormones. It's all about your hormones, right? It's all about this, it's all about that. Hormones steer the car, but the calories fuel it. So calories still matter. You can't break the laws of thermodynamics. If you're not losing weight, it's because you probably overate, or you were stressed and you weren't tracking your food clearly, and you actually probably consume more calories than you thought you did. And there are many reasons that can go behind that, but it still doesn't mean that calories don't count. So it's making sure that we are mindful of that with our clients, but we still can't break the laws of thermodynamics, okay? So it is calories in versus calories out, okay? But what might influence the calories in is if you're tired, hungry, upset, stressed. All these things can lead you to just to have a bit of cheese while I'm cooking dinner, and actually fancy a bit of ice cream after dinner. I'm gonna have another glass of wine tonight. I've had a stressful day at work. You didn't even notice it. Our food memory is crap. It's really bad. Most people, apparently most studies when it comes to tracking, most people will underreport their calorie intake by 50%. So people think they're in a deficit, and they said, oh no, I only ate 1,500 calories. No, you ate closer to 3,000. And that is sometimes not their fault. It might be the skill of tracking. Some people don't understand, oh, I didn't know you had to track your cooking oils. And they go, well, Jamie Oliver, I blame Jamie Oliver for a lot of this. 3 tablespoons of olive oil, that's like you've added 450 calories to your meal, and you haven't even clocked it. Oh, I didn't know I had to track my coffees. Oh, that latte, 2 lattes a day is another 500 calories, right? So then we're almost at 1,000 calories that you didn't even realize that you hadn't had, that have been underreported, basically. So I don't necessarily think it's people's fault. Also, there may be sometimes where it's people's fault because they don't want to admit to their PT, I broke and I had a bit of a breakdown and I did this and I did that. It's called being a human being. I always say to people, especially when we're doing the food diary and stuff, is I don't give a shit what you eat. I really don't. I would love to just see what you are eating because I make zero judgment. If you guys saw what I eat, you'd probably think I'm weird with what I eat. I really don't care. I much prefer to get the honest truth because that's when we can help you the most, because we can start to identify patterns. Is it, oh, it's a certain day of the week, you do this at this time, or every time after dinner I have to have something sweet. Okay, fine. Could we scratch that itch but make it lower calorie? Yeah, maybe let's think about that. Or actually, do you need to have a bottle of wine every night? Like, is every night need to have them? So it's just getting it's the honesty and the truth between the coach and the client, but it all comes down to calories. So when you start to see things talking about hormones, yes, it can have an influence, but not on thermodynamics. It's more on your behaviors. That's what it tends to have an influence on. So yeah, if your hormones are through the floor and you feel like crap, yeah, you're more likely going to overeat or overconsume things. That's just called being human. But it still won't break the laws of thermodynamics, okay? So just be mindful if you do see marketing, social media, all that kind of stuff about hormones.
Did you talk about hormones though that when you enter the menopause,
Yeah.
it's where your fat gets laid down? So suppose the calories are through in it, as in you are calorie, what was it?
So
Excess.
you're in a surplus, yeah.
It's where it goes on your body.
Where fat is stored in your body is generally genetic.
Genetic.
It's dictated by your genes.
I know, I had to look at my mother.
Yeah. And it is, and sometimes that sucks. And unfortunately, we can't spot reduce where we want to. Again, a lot of these skin clinics around here will say that they can fat reduce, spot a certain spot. I always said it's like emptying a pool. So if you scoop water out the pool, you can scoop it out the corner, but it's coming out the whole pool, right? That's how body fat works, unfortunately. So that's, yeah. So yes, again, just do be mindful. I know they do it towards women as well, and I feel that's just playing on either sort of anxieties or fear around it, and it's unfair because it's not. Okay, so hopefully, yeah, if you see that stuff, just be very mindful of it, but do remember that, yeah, hormones will dictate how you feel, but they won't dictate whether you're in a calorie deficit or not. Cool. Another thing we talk about is obviously daily activity, strength training. You guys are here, you know what we're all about. If you are moving more, that NEAT is about 15% of your daily output. Obviously, the more NEAT you do, the better. But obviously that has there's limits to it, right? You can't just do 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 steps a day because no one's got the time for that, right? It's just making sure we're staying active throughout the day and then being mindful of making sure that we are just trying to maintain the muscle or build muscle tissue, because that's the thing that really drives BMR, basal metabolic rate, tends to be muscle. Unfortunately, this tends to be why men burn more calories at rest, because we tend to be bigger and have more muscle tissue. So that's why I always sometimes I train husbands and wives, and the wife always complains that the husband, he eats less and he loses fat way quicker. And it's like, yeah, his metabolism is higher, unfortunately. Just, it is what it is, I'm afraid. But that's what we do here, right? So we focus on daily activity, strength training, and that's why we keep an eye on your steps. Because when you're in a diet, your body tries to conserve energy. That's why you feel tired, fatigued, and you're probably, without realizing it, your steps would just start to get lower and lower and lower. You're going to notice Paige, Ricky, and I are going to be sat down a lot more as we get closer to July, because we're all just going to be trying to conserve energy. Just like, okay, do another rep. Just keep going. But that's our body's, that's doing it naturally, right? Sometimes it's more extreme. We're going to the extreme, you don't have to do what we're doing. But you might notice if you are dieting, you do feel a bit more tired. So you just got to be mindful that you're keeping your activity up, okay? So we've got to make sure we set realistic expectations, right? If you're expecting to lose 3 stone in a week, unless you're chopping off a limb, it's not happening. So we've got to set expectations, right? So if you go from that sort of 0.5 to 1% body fat per week, that can kind of set your expectations of what you should be expecting over the time, okay? So if you're setting yourself a time to do this, because a diet should be a phase, right? You shouldn't be dieting forever. The people who diet forever is John Bon Jovi there, the skeleton behind you. That's what happens, right? It's a set phase that you diet, and then at some point you're going to go, actually, I'm kind of happy with where I'm at. I'm going to go back to maintenance. And that kind of comes to, so Lizzie is at maintenance at the moment. So how much did you lose last year, Lizzie? 18 kilos last year, which is amazing, right?
When I first met him,
Yeah.
you can call it 20, I was 83 kilos when we first met, and 60. So over the time we've been together.
Yeah. And now Lizzie has done all the hard work, and now we're trying to maintain that. So the goal this year is, can we get to the end of the year in the same space she is now?
I'm 2 months now.
Yeah.
Without even tracking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is, now, don't get me wrong, Lizzie and I have been working together for 11 years, right? Okay, so we didn't just nail it on the first attempt. We actually did it, I think, 2021, we did our first sort of real fat loss thing. Yeah. That's when I sort of started setting up this place. And you lost quite a lot of weight then. Then you changed jobs, and her lifestyle totally changed, right? So her systems kind of fell out, completely changed. And you have to adapt to that. And that's kind of on me. We didn't adapt to that quick enough, and the weight kind of slowly crept up. And then you came last January and you're like, nope, sod this. Right, this is it. I'm going to nail it. And we did. But Lizzie is absolutely religious on filling in her tracker. Like, I see her weight every week. I've got a lovely graph of last year, and it just makes it so much easier because I can have a quick overview and just go, oh yeah, right, we're all on target. Or, oh, okay, something's happened here, right? A few reds on the check-in scores and the photos as well. So Lizzie was doing weekly check-in photos, front, side and back, because sometimes it's not always the weight on the scale that you're looking at. Sometimes it's the visual aspect as well. And the visual aspect, I think, can be a real motivator if you've been doing it for a long period of time. You look back, because you see yourself every day, right? It's really hard to notice any of the changes. But when you look back on a photo and go, oh crap, 3 months ago, whoa, okay, I definitely look different. It just gives you that little bit of extra, like, oh, okay, come on, we're going in the right path.
Clothes feeling looser.
Absolutely, yeah, clothes, massive one. Yeah, I always ask, I say to people like, okay, if you've got a pair of jeans, a dress, a shirt, you know, something that's relatively tight fitting at the moment, use that, chuck it on once a month and see, like, and it's like, oh yeah, belt buckle's getting looser, or, you know, I'm getting more through it at the moment. Perfect, it's a great way to do it, okay? So.
Do you see seasonal fluctuation? You know, winter is
100%.
much harder time.
Yeah. Do you know why we? So do you know why we tend to eat more in the winter? So part of it is actually apparently on an average graph of fat gain in the UK, I believe, it's pretty level most of the year, and then it spikes in December. But the problem is most people don't lose it again. It goes up as a step and it stays there. And then it goes up as another step. And this happens over years, right, for most people. Most people, unless something happens to them, you know, lifestyle change, things happen and they suddenly gain a load of weight. But for most people, it's gradual over time. The other reason we eat more in the winter is it keeps us warm. So the thermic effect of food is eating actually warms us up. Why do you think we eat less in the summer? Because we're hot. And actually eating, you're not as hungry. So you're hungrier in the winter because your body's like, you're cold, go and eat more food, you'll warm us up. And in the summer, you're like, oh, I'm boiling, I can't eat, I'm absolutely stuffed. So that's why. So again, you have to be mindful of this around this sort of time. Dieting is relatively hard here, but you kind of want to do it now so you can look your best in the summer. That's sort of the idea behind it. Excellent. Consistency, hopefully, as you guys are realizing, is the most important thing over intensity. So we can all sprint for 2 weeks. You could all eat. Actually, one of my clients, Daniela, she did a photo shoot with her previous PT, this place called Ultimate Performance in London. She's one of their poster children. She's actually up in Liverpool Street. Her before and afters in Liverpool Street. It's incredible. She was telling me about what they were doing with her towards the end. She was on chicken, broccoli and rice 3 times a day, which I think was about 1,200 calories. She was doing 15,000 steps, and she was doing an hour of cardio a day. Right, that is the 100% total extreme, right? But they were doing that to get a photo shoot. The incentive structure they've created at this place is kind of fucked, basically. The better the before and after they get, the more the trainer gets paid, right? So they get bonuses for doing that, right? They don't really give a shit about her in the long run. They just want to get that, you know, thing that they're getting out of it. So then she's come to us, and she was back close to the weight that she was before. We've managed to get it down to a sort of manageable, maintainable weight where she feels like she can stick to it. She's getting married late this year, so we're doing another little push towards that, but she's in a much better place, I hope, or healthier place than she was there, because they just pushed it to the extreme. That's like redlining, that's not pleasant. That's not sustainable. So no one really wants to do that. So the consistency or results is all about getting yourself into a calorie deficit, that's your calorie deficit, daily activity and strength training. That is basically, essentially, how you get the results that you guys are kind of looking for, okay? Now, does anyone have any questions? And would anyone like me to jump into part 2, or do you want to save that for next time? I'm totally up for either or. Do you guys want me to go through some of the questions on the board? Yeah? Cool. Okay, so top one is, how important are fats and carbs? That's actually in part 2. Well, actually, I'll talk about the importance of protein, but let's kind of skip to it, okay? So, as you said, protein is the one we value the most. That's why it's number 2 on our fat loss fundamentals. Hit your protein target. I think protein comes from the Latin protea, which means of prime importance. So it does. It's one of the things we look at. Protein is the thing that keeps you full, satiated, helps you with muscle recovery and repair. And it also has a high thermic effect, so it actually burns calories. It's something like a third of the calories through protein are actually burnt up in digestion. So they're actually super low calorie. They're probably around like 3 calories per gram, not 4. Fats and carbs, all studies done on people in a diet or a deficit, the difference between fats and carbs was negligible on the outcome. It all came down to the deficit. And then we always say to people, fats and carbs is personal preference. So if you feel like, personally, I run better on carbs, so I'm happy to lower my fats. Like, I keep enough because you want to have fats, they're very good for you, healthy. But I'm happy to put that lower and increase the carbs because I'm relatively active, I like to train, all that kind of stuff. So for me, carbs, I would rather keep them in. For other people, they're actually not as active, they have desk job, and when they lower their carbs, they feel great. So like I say, it's personal preference. Like if you've done a low carb diet before and you were like, oh, I feel awesome, crack on, do that. But if you've done a low carb diet before and you're like, I feel miserable, I'm so tired, I can't do anything, maybe don't do that. Maybe favor one or the other. But that totally comes down to hitting your calories first, making sure that's level, then hitting your protein target, which we would set for you guys. And then it's fats and carbs is, like I say, it's personal preference. I would generally say it's probably easier to reduce your fat intake. Fats are 9 calories per gram, carbs are 4. So it's like less than half of the calories through carbs. So if you want to fill your plate up and feel like you're eating big amounts of food, probably better to have carbohydrates in there than going for fats. That would just be maybe my bias towards that. If you want to feel like you're eating a lot, because that's kind of the game with dieting, is you want to trick yourself into feel like you're eating a lot.